Welcome, everyone, to Indivisible Plymouth's second podcast episode of the Participation Project. And today I'm really excited to have with us Craig Swallow, who is a candidate for U.S. Congress. Welcome, Craig.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm always so happy to spend time with an Indivisible group, especially after my background with Indivisible. So it's always great to be in a space with a fellow Indivisibler or whatever we call ourselves in that regard.
Yeah, that's exciting. I was really excited to see when I was reading your profile a little bit that you do have that Indivisible background. And I was reading that you are the son of Portuguese immigrants who fled an authoritarian regime in the 60s, right?
Yeah. My grandparents, I'll say, my grandparents. My mom was born in Portugal as well, so she came with them when she was 2. But yeah, absolutely, that is part of my story.
Yeah, that's really neat. I mean, so at least you have that identification and lived experience of the immigrant
for sure.
flight.
The immigrant story, I think, for all of us is there in some way. And for me, especially very important. Growing up, my grandparents lived a block above me. I live in their house now, so it's actually really nice coming back to the area and being there and feeling close to them. But yeah, I can remember going to local Portuguese restaurants and being with my grandparents and them talking about immigrating over and seeing people in the restaurant who are from the same area of Portugal as them, and just what that community building really does, and making people feel more welcome and safe in a new country. And so, that was really important to me growing up and seeing that. And I don't know if it really felt as impactful on me until moments like this and until the last 10 years where you realize that a lot of those stories are being discredited or are not seen as the same value they did when I was growing up. I feel like growing up and being of the immigrant story was such an important part of the story. And now there's, a big push to almost, look down upon that. And, that's never something I will do. I'm very, very proud of my Portuguese roots.
Yeah, excellent. I'll go into more about your background a little bit and the things that you've done already. But one of the things that I hear from some folks is that they don't feel like it's fair because immigrants get free food stamps and they get free health insurance from the government. And I'm not really so sure that that's true, that undocumented folks get free health insurance or free health care. Could you clarify that a little bit?
I would say I don't agree that that's what's happening either. And I would also push back on this stuff isn't free. This is paid for by taxpayers. Mm-hmm. Our tax dollars should go to supporting working in middle class, making lives better so that people can, build up to the next level of wherever they are in their lives, whether it's that promotion or getting a house or just, continuing to better themselves. We pay for these things. And immigrants also pay a lot of taxes and contribute to our economy exponentially. And so to assume that it's free and that they're freeloading and that they're taking from someone else is just not true to me. I think the people who are taking from us are the wealthy and the elite, the people who continue to get tax subsidies and tax write-offs and divide us with some of this rhetoric that we need to be looking at the person next to us who may look slightly different to us for our problems. And I think we need to stop looking left and right, and we need to stop looking up.
I love that. Yeah, that's really great. Definitely the undocumented immigrants do not get free health insurance. They do, like you said, pay taxes, and they also pay into Social Security, which they will never get back. They will never reap the benefits of that. So imagine if all the undocumented immigrants left the country. I mean, we would lose a lot of money in our Social Security.
It's why I've had no problem saying we need to abolish ICE, because not only are we mistreating these migrants, we're treating them inhumanely. We have an organization, ICE, that is taking our tax dollars that should be going to things that benefit us and causing fear, causing harm, separating families, deporting these people to places that they're not even, it's not even their country of origin. And we can have a discussion about, breaking laws and what is the repercussion of that. And if part of that for a migrant is being deported, okay, but also it should be humanely and to their country of origin. We should not be shipping them to areas in this world that they'll never be seen again. There's been thousands of people from ICE detention facilities that have gone missing in the last year alone, and that should terrify all of us.
Thousands, at
least from their reporting, and we can take that with a grain of salt because we don't know how accurate that is.
Right. Yeah, and they've been separated from their families because the kids maybe were born here, so they're citizens, so they may not leave.
And then they're shuffled around from center to center, so you can't keep track of them, and their court cases restart each time, so that they never really get their due process, which is one of the things that this country was founded on. Here in this state, fighting against the violations of due process and habeas corpus, and we really need to remember that as part of our story is in this state and this country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really important to remember. You were a substitute teacher in New Bedford. For your higher education was Bridgewater State, right?
So yes, I started off at Bristol Community College, which shout out to BCC. I love BCC so much. They were so good to me, and my younger 20 years trying to figure out what my path was, what my calling was, and so BCC to Bridgewater during that time, substitute teacher at New Bedford High School, and it was looking back, it's still one of my favorite jobs that I've ever had.
That's a trip. It's very rewarding. I used to be a teacher too. I was a health teacher, and it is very rewarding. And then I read that you have a special place in your heart for our elderly constituency.
Yeah.
And I do as well. And I've worked in nursing homes, and I understand where you worked, and your parents did too, in a nursing home?
I worked at one of my first jobs was a housekeeper at a nursing home in Fairhaven, Alden Court. It may be a different name now. I can't know. My mom and my brother have been in healthcare. My mother's been at St. Luke's Hospital in New Bedford, Massachusetts for about 30 years.
Wow.
So she is a staple of the community. She's the ICU nurse manager. I watched her do it through COVID. So she's just beyond impressive. My brother, also a nurse at St. Luke's, has been there for about 10 years on the PCU floor. So part of that story in saying that is, and getting involved in all of this and people looking at me and being like, your background isn't of politics or government and, you've never done anything like this. And I can agree, but I will say that my family and my history in particular has always been dedicated to serving our community and might not have been in an elected capacity. But whether we are in healthcare, education, food and beverage and restaurants, we've been a part of our communities, and I think that's super important. Because,
right in there on the front lines.
Yeah, well, and also, I think there's a lot to be said for the people who live, work in the community, and are not necessarily elected officials, but have that insight into what everyday people are going through. And not to say that local and state officials don't, but I do think sometimes the higher you get, the more disconnected from that sort of emotional connection.
Yeah, absolutely. Could you say more about how your time working in nursing homes and what you've been exposed to has sort of shaped your understanding about the critical role that accessible, affordable healthcare plays?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think almost every job that I've had has sort of exposed me to that a little bit. I think, being young and working in a nursing home, I didn't have the full understanding of healthcare and that's impact, but I certainly understood the repercussions of wealth and what that meant for people in those spaces and, who had family come visiting them and were afforded some extra luxuries within their care and some who weren't. And, that's hard to see. But I think as I got older, and especially getting into, the food and beverage space, working with people who are bartenders and servers and line cooks and knowing the environment of restaurants, it's not a lot of places that, restaurant workers are afforded health care. They have to find other avenues not provided from employment. So you're looking for, state or federal provided health insurance. And even those costs are really, really, really hard. And I think all of us can kind of see a different world for ourselves when we think of taking that $300 a month off of our plate of health insurance, taking those thousands of dollars of deductibles off of our plate, really making sure that medication is affordable. And I think, there's lots of conversations to be had about the system, but we all know that when we start taking care of people younger and earlier and providing preventative care, we have a lot less acute long-term care to provide for that is exponentially way more expensive. And not that that's never going to happen, but again, we're paying for this. We are paying for this as American citizens. Our money is just being spent in not the right way. It's wildly mismanaged. And we can see that in almost every department that we look at. And the Pentagon or Department of Homeland Security would be one of the first ones. If you can't pass an audit, if you refuse to pass an audit, and there's no repercussions for that, you never will. There's no accountability to the American people. The accountability is to the club that runs it.
So there's no incentive to
there is no incentive.
That.
And the representation that we have now across the country is part of this problem. They have no incentive either because they have benefited from this for quite some time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's terrifying, really. Getting back to what you brought up about the wealth disparity in America, I found a little statistic that the top 1% of households are holding over 30% of the whole nation's wealth. That's terrifying. And the bottom 50% of households have roughly only 2% of the wealth. And that was from the end of 2025. And that disparity is getting, that gap is getting
larger by the second.
By the second, yeah. And it's hard to see how that can even, how do you go about addressing that and, kind of closing that gap, especially with an administration that we have now?
For sure. The current administration certainly makes it a challenge. But I think there's a few things in there that really stick out to me. The percentage of, the 1%, how much they own, it's not just the wealth, because that wealth translates to a bunch of other things that we know. It is influence in Washington, D.C. It is super PACs. It is controlling media and our information. It is controlling our entertainment. This is a trickle-down effect of what we have now is an oligarchy who is basically in control of almost every facet of our civilization, our life here in the United States. When you think of someone like Larry Ellison, who is buying up, I think that's the right name, but buying up Warner Brothers and what he controls and the information and whose ear he has, Donald Trump, I think that's terrifying for me. And there are a few things to combat that. I think Elizabeth Warren has shown many times that her focus is on the working and middle class, and that some of her economic policies have such great impact on the working and middle class when the top 1% just pays a little bit more.
She just proposed a wealth tax.
That 2 cents, right, on the 101 million or 1 billion more.
Yeah, it's not even the rich people that we know. It's the ultra, ultra, ultra rich. And if you could talk about the difference between a wealth tax and an income tax, because they don't have to pay really, because they have good lawyers, and they, even if they're not illegally not paying taxes, they may be doing it legally, but the income tax that they kind of get around paying, and yet us middle class, lower, poorer people are paying so much in income tax. But
right.
The wealth tax is a totally different thing.
Yeah, well, because they're not getting a paycheck every week. You know what I mean? They're not like, oh, I got to wait for my paycheck on Friday before I can pay that bill, before I can hop in my private jet and hop over to
right.
Europe. That's not how it works.
So the taxes aren't taken out of their paychecks.
Right, and then their money is moved and manipulated in ways that make them not accountable. Like Elon Musk, for example, when he bought Twitter, I'm pretty sure he put up his shares for Tesla as the purchasing price. And it's almost like that money just doesn't exist, and there's no repercussions there. And so what we need to do is start applying actual laws that close these loopholes for these people. And whether that's making sure that their percentage of salary compared, as a CEO to their workforce is only a certain percentage, that they can't take more. Things like that, I think, are the ways that we implicate that, making sure that a wealth tax includes capital gains. And I know some people will hear that and kind of get freaked out because, that top percent makes us think that that's going to be our capital gains. But we can set a percentage of capital gains. So that's when, when you pass away and you leave your house to your family, they're not paying exponential taxes on that. That's different. Everyone should have that ability to create generational wealth like my family had. Like my parents kept my grandparents' house. I'm there now. People deserve to have that. But it is these billionaires and millionaires, these ultra wealthy, that are using these loopholes, using these tax sort of almost like holes that are purposely, there's not legislation purposely written there because it influences too many people. It affects them. It affects the people in Congress too. They benefit from this as well.
Yeah, it's all about the money.
Right, exactly, which is why even with the gutting of the Voting Rights Act this week that we saw with the Supreme Court.
Yeah,
it's devastating. It's truly upsetting, and we know the repercussions of that will happen instantaneously. We've already seen Louisiana saying they're going to redraw their maps, and it will implicate and hurt people of color and minorities. But I think with that, we can look at the money that has been spent for these things to happen. Like, who has been influenced on the Supreme Court by money to rule in this way? The Heritage Foundation has been at work for a long time.
Yeah, that's the very conservative think tank.
Right, exactly. And so
Ray wrote. Did they write that Project 2025?
Yeah, they have, and there's a lot of people from there who have rose up in the ranks on the right.
Administration.
Yeah, I think Caroline Leavitt came out of there as well. So, but what we do is impose actual ethical and financial disclosures that Congress and the Supreme Court have to adhere to every year.
They don't have to do that already?
If they are, they're manipulating it. We all know that. You know what I mean? How many gifts have we heard about Supreme Court justices receiving, whether it's Alito or Thomas, and especially Thomas with his wife and being involved in January 6th and some of the Heritage Foundation. Again, it all comes back to the money. Where you see the money is spent, you see where people's loyalties or where their priorities are. And it is not with the American people, because we are not the ones funneling that money to them.
Yeah, they're spending tons and tons of money on campaigns.
Also, which is why we should have legislation that limits when Congress is campaigning and accepting fundraising.
Yes, please.
It is insane. And just, looking at our district after the 2024 election, by 2025, we have a member of Congress having a town hall saying there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do. But has already accepted PAC money from the likes of Lockheed Martin, other defense contractors. And that just says a lot. The money means everything. And it's just, I think, a time for us to really have working and middle class representation that has no obligations to take this money or allow the system to continue. Because the people in it right now are obligated to allow this to continue. It has benefited them. They've stayed in power. And it's, allowed these corporations to continue on. And so that's the kind of change I want to fight for. Yeah.
And I feel like the lesser income earning folks, whether we're on the left or the right, we can probably all agree that I would hope that taxing the ultra wealthy, the wealth tax, which would be on their yachts and their airplanes and their properties and things like that, that could benefit us all. And we should all be able to agree on that, because there are people on the right that are struggling financially as well. So it's like Reverend William Barber has a poor people's campaign that he is trying to unite poor people, black, white, LGBTQIA+, just everyone, because we kind of all have the same interests, even if we don't all realize it.
And also, we could implement this wealth tax on them, and they would still be so wealthy.
Right.
Like, their lives would not change. They have become so wealthy that I truly believe some of them, or most of them, don't understand repercussions for their actions or, accountability. They're
very out of touch.
Well, because the wealth is so exponential that it will never affect them.
Yep, right, because it just interest on interest on interest on interest, yeah.
Right, it's an amount of money that they themselves, their descendants, everyone in their life that they would consider a close friend would not be able to spend in their lifetime. It is amount of money, like $1 billion. I just saw an article the other day, like, we as human beings can't even really process the difference. Human beings tend to think that like $1 million is in the middle between 1,000 and 1 billion. But the difference between 1 million to 1,000 and then 1 million to 1 billion is so
Huge.
grand. And we just can't comprehend that. And so when you see these people who are like fighting for billionaires to not to be taxed, I'm like, yeah, I just don't understand, because again, they'll continue to be as wealthy as they are, and we will just be better off. We will have better protections. We will be safer.
Yeah. So does Elizabeth Warren's bill that she's proposing, does that have any chance of getting through the legislation of any kind of wealth tax?
You know, it's a difficult thing to talk about with that, because the short answer should be yes. You and I both agree, and that, you know, the taxes, like it's not a huge cost to them, a cent on every dollar or 2 cents on every dollar after a certain amount.
Yeah.
That is not a big deal. I think what happens there is, again, we have representation, not necessarily here, but throughout all of Congress, that would rather fight to protect the system and protect that as it is. And then also people don't really understand. So Warren, who is a progressive fighter, has a certain connotation with her name. And so people who may not understand her policies just automatically think that it's going to cost them, their taxes are going to be raised.
Yeah.
But that's not the thought process. The thought process should be, we're already spending this money. It's not being spent to make my life better. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not impacting me. You know, that I think should be the new litmus test of what happens in Congress. What government contracts are going out. I can't, you know, I'm a realist. I know we can't never have a defense contractor. We can't get rid of the Defense Department. Totally understand.
Department of War, you mean?
Nope. Nope, not going to do that. Refuse, not falling into that one. Department of Defense. But, you know, our government contracts should have almost like a footnote that's like a portion of what you do, even if you're a defense contractor, has to be towards bettering the life of the American people. That's the only way you're going to get our tax dollars or our tax subsidies or anything, because at this point, we spent way too much time and money since I was born protecting corporations with the idea that we'll all benefit from it eventually, and it's just not trickling down. So my thought process is, let's flip that. Let's trickle up. Let's give the money back to the American people, improve their lives, and I promise you, when our lives are better, GDP goes up. Those corporations will see the benefit of it.
Yeah.
We're not seeing the benefit of them having the money because they hoard wealth, and it is all about profits, not bettering the lives of the American people.
Yeah, and hopefully things can kind of get off the ground with, I know it's too bad that she has that name connotation.
Yeah, you know, I think, and maybe that's changing. I shouldn't just say that.
I haven't heard about it in a long time.
Yeah, you know, I think it's something I see with Mamdani too. I shouldn't just say as Warren, but this idea that they're a progressive or a socialist or from the left, and so therefore automatically they're written off, or that it's just going to raise taxes on working and middle class. And I think we have to be very articulate about, we're raising taxes on the ultra wealthy to spend money on bettering your life.
Yeah.
And I think Mamdani did it wonderfully because
right away.
Was just him. Well, he's himself. You know, there isn't this background of being in politics and this idea of a career politician that he had with him. Like he was fresh and honest and didn't try to change who he was to meet the moment. He just was the man for the moment. And that's what I think we're seeing a big disconnect with a lot of Congress right now and a lot of people who are trying to run. Like if you look at Janet Mills backing out in Maine, she was not for the moment. She was adjusting herself to meet the moment and be a politician of the moment. But we're starting to really catch on to that inauthenticness. Like that's not what you really want. That's not what you've always fought for. And I think that's really important, what's happening right now.
Yeah. People are really discouraged and frightened in this country right now. It just sometimes feels very, very discouraging. It feels like we're going to hell in a handbag. So what would be some of your top priorities to work towards if you are to be elected?
Thank you for asking me top priorities. I'm very often asked what's the one thing I would focus on, and I think that's a big problem for me and why Democrats have continued to fail. Because there has been this idea that we can only get one thing done, or we can't do everything. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And sure, there's probably going to be some limits, but I think we have to go into this with the same aggression that this administration did, except in improving government, making it more accountable, and improving lives of American people. So to that end, for me, big things are we need to ban stock trading by members of Congress and their immediate families.
Yeah.
While also overturning Citizens United. It's doable. It's a lot of work, but it requires members of Congress believing in it, wanting it, and informing their districts. They need to be the representatives of the district. And part of that now, and why I think you see a lot of, or at least this not approving of Democrats in general, because they're still not really out there. They're just kind of waiting for the wind to blow over, and they'll be back in power and they'll fix it. And I don't think a lot of people believe that. But those two are really important to me, and term limits. And so I get a lot of pushback on term limits from some people. There's this idea of institutional knowledge. We really need that. And I can understand that. I'll agree with that a little bit. I would also say institutional knowledge in the last year and a half has pretty much got us nothing from the Democrats. Well, let's just say it's important. There's still a limit. There still needs to be a limit there. You know what I mean? Whether it's 5 terms, 6 terms, 7 terms for the House, I don't know. But when you get to that type of level, that's 14 years. That's a long time in Congress, especially if you're a House rep who then goes to be a senator. And then there's no term limits there.
Oh, there's no term limits with the Senate.
Congress at all. You know what I mean? So it just creates this system of people who are career politicians. And I think career politicians are something, if in 2028 we never have that again, it's people dedicated just to public service.
Yeah.
That's what I'd like to see. Beyond that, education as a former teacher is super important to me. There's a few things there I really want to see change. Starting civic engagement young with elementary school.
You taught government and history or something?
Yeah, I was a high school history teacher.
Yeah.
I did my student teaching at Dartmouth, which was amazing. And I loved New Bedford High as a substitute teacher. I feel so lucky for being there.
It's a hard job. Substituting is
It was.
Really
it was. And it wasn't. I think the kids really respect. I was young at that time.
Yeah.
I was 25.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of kids.
That's a blessing and a curse when you're.
For sure.
Yeah.
But I think they saw a lot of myself, and they saw what they could be in 10 years or so, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And then the teachers at New Bedford High, I remember in my first year, I was like, I'm just a sub. And a teacher stopped and looked at me and went, no, you are not just a sub. You are a teacher. You are part of this team. You're part of this group. And really welcomed me there. And so I really appreciated my time there. My other time was spent in New York City. I moved to New York City for a while. I taught at a charter school for a little bit. I had been in food and beverage for a long time. I was ready to get out. I looked at the charter school and was, got into it. I think the experience has certainly taught me why investing in public schools and them getting the full investment of us and not having charter school systems, that really reinforced that for me. But also made me recognize that we need to adapt our education system for kids to be prepared for the future. One, civic engagement, the basic shopping cart rule. How do you make sure you're an active member of society, doing right by others, doing right by yourself, doing right by your community? Teaching second language young, because that's when kids are excited to learn it. And then as they're getting older, starting to introduce trades. I went to New Bedford High. I wish I had gone to Greater New Bedford Vocational School, because I think learning a trade is super important. Not only because, I was in high school, I did the typical studies that everyone did. I didn't really have anything where I was working with my hands and sort of assumed that I was not good at that. Once I became a bartender and was like, I can kind of create stuff and do things with that.
Yeah.
It was like a whole new thing for me. And I started having interest in carpentry and wanted to learn that a little bit. And so I think the more that we can get kids to learn and be excited about, the better off they'll be in their future. And so thinking about my job as a housekeeper in a nursing home, we had work release program at New Bedford High. And as long as you had a job and worked a certain amount of hours, you could get out of school early, which was amazing for anyone 17 years old. But how much different would that be if the job was working in a park in your town, working at the beach, cleaning up the beach, making sure that your community is taken care of? Not only do we have kids active in our community being part of it, they're getting a well-paying job. The city benefits. We all benefit. They benefit. They see the value in staying in their community and building it up. I would never tell anyone not to go off to New York City and try something new like I did. Everyone has their story. But I think the more value or the more we can show our youth there is value to staying in your community, building it up, being a contributing member of your small piece of the world. Doesn't mean that you're not a big part of the world. Doesn't mean that you don't get to go off and see the world. It's just a different approach. And I really, really would like to see those types of initiatives implicated in our education system.
Yeah.
And I think that requires a federal buy-in and funding and
Well, that's what I'm thinking as you're talking. I'm thinking, wow, what could we accomplish if a lot of money were invested into education?
We would accomplish so much. Kids would, because essentially my thought process always is those kids feel more empowered, they're more excited, they have more tools at their disposal to go off and go to college or go to a trade school or just start working. Some kids left New Bedford Voc and immediately started working in plumbing or trades, and they're very wealthy and
Doing
successful.
well, yeah.
But what if they're also taught how to open up their own business at the same time? You know what I mean? So they could work with someone and then create something of their own. These are the things that I think this country has always been or was problem solvers. We looked at the moon and said, how do we get there? Mm-hmm. And so I want to continue. I want to bring that back but bring it back here. Like, how do we look around and say, how do we make this better? How do we improve everything? You know, how do we get back to Roosevelt era Democrats of just really getting things done for the American people, and then watching how our country just expands and improves from that? Because again, when we have money in our pocket, we spend it. Our GDP improves, life improves. It is just fact.
Yeah. So those priorities were term limits, education. And there was one. Was there one
banning
other?
Stock trading, overturning Citizens United, and Medicare for all. Medicare for all, we can afford it. I'm telling you, there are lots of progressive candidates, especially in Massachusetts. I will always use a quick moment when I'm on something like this to give a shout out to someone like Jeremy Whalen in District 1, Jason Poulos in District 4, who are same situation as me, up and coming, not really background in education, but putting themselves out there to be the voice for the working and middle class people and say, this system can change, this system can work for us. This money, these taxes we spend or pay every year, they can go to things that actually benefit us. But we need the people in the positions that are willing to do that.
Yeah, it gets me angry that the ultra rich are not suffering every day and crying because their kids aren't going to be able to move out of their home, of their parents' home because they can't afford it. It's just maddening.
It gets me angry when people ask, I don't want to say angry because I don't want people to see me on the campaign trail and ask me this and think I'm mad. But it does frustrate me when people are like, well, how are you going to afford that? I'm like, because it's not asked about a lot of other things. It's not asked about the military. It's not asked about
good point.
Bailing out industries. You know what I mean? Whether it's automotive, Wall Street, we've done it multiple times since I've been born. Mm-hmm. My generation as millennials have been really left behind in that regard. No one asks about how to spend the money, where the money's coming from.
How are we going to afford the war? Like the war in Iran.
$1 billion a day.
I read $2 billion a day.
I would bet that's probably more accurate.
And I read that it's going to ultimately end up costing at least $1 trillion overall.
And
by the time we're done.
I wonder if that includes
the
economic fallout from everything that's happening as well.
That's a good point.
Because we all know it takes prices so much longer to drop than it does for them to rise. They rise like that. They drop like it's like watching paint dry.
Yeah.
And so we know that these gas prices are going to take a while. That's why everything with the gerrymandering and the Supreme Court ruling and what has been happening, Donald Trump says things, and it gets me very frustrated because this is with the representation we've had currently and other people who do not take him for his word. And he said last year that he would bet in 2026 there would be no Democrats elected. And I wonder what that means, whether that's he bans the Democratic Party or something that's happening now where this manipulation and gerrymandering gets put in place. Will there never be a Democrat elected in 26? I doubt that. That's hard to pull off. But there's something telling there. You know what I mean?
He does lie, but he also tells the truth when he's saying
his projection.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He's just told us what he's going to do, and it's crazy. It's terrifying. Supreme Court justice, you were talking about term limits.
Yeah.
Should we have term limits for the court
Yes,
justices as well?
absolutely. And we should have as many justices as we have circuits. That's why there were 9 before, and then we included more. We did not increase that. So I would say we need to include more, probably bump it up to 13. And then from there, yes, term limits, 18 years max. There's no reason why anyone should have a lifetime control, especially when we're seeing there's no ethical standards that they're forced to adhere to. They're basically have to police each other. There's no financial standards, and if
they're vulnerable to as the other politicians are lifelong, they're vulnerable to being influenced by
of course,
money.
Yeah, absolutely, and power corrupts absolutely. And so part of what makes this country wonderful is that we were always curious but hesitant about our politicians. And I feel like in the last 20 years or so, we've sort of just come complacent with who we have and what the system is, and that it cannot change. We have, again, these billionaires spending billions to let us know that our vote doesn't count, that the system can't change, that this is the only way to live.
People don't like change.
It's scary. And you know what? But we're all going through it. It's all it's happening right now, whether we want it to or not.
Yep.
But what's happening is that the change is not benefiting us. Mm-hmm. It is creating a system where this oligarchy continues to thrive, where this push towards a Christian nationalist nation continues to thrive. I mean, even before I left to come here, I saw something. It was like Prager University is having lessons in public schools. That should terrify everyone. When you see a Christian or any religious, faith-based, I want to make that very clear.
Yes.
It's not about Catholicism or Christianity. Mm-hmm. It is about religious indoctrination in our schools, regardless of which religion it is. Mm-hmm. And that's not fair. That's not fair to the kids who are there and not of that faith and of those that just don't want to be. Mm-hmm. And so,
well, and also, how would we ever give equal time to every single religion? Like, it's got to be fair.
Right.
So we have a separation of church and state.
Well, they only want that when the Pope speaks.
Oh, right. Right.
If the Pope speaks, then separation of church and state. Other than that, let's merge the two together. Mm-hmm. You know, and if we're going to, then they need to pay taxes because that's what they need to do.
Yes.
So if they're going to be speaking about political ideologies and trying to influence elections, their tax exempt status should be taken away, as far as I'm concerned. That's
a thought.
Yeah, and I think
amazing.
It should be the churches who make it very clear that they're violating that.
Yeah.
It's certainly not all Catholic and Christian, places of worship.
Yep.
Yeah, you know what I mean? There's some churches who are very welcoming and stay out of that and follow the teachings of their Pope. Mm-hmm. And that there are some that are very much not doing that. And I think that's when you lose tax exemption.
Yeah. Absolutely.
We all need to start facing some repercussions here. And that's why, I know I'm new to politics. This is all very new to me. And so I know accountability and affordability, my platform can sound really like blasé, but accountability is something that we all face in our everyday lives. For me, in just my most recent role, weekly meeting, monthly meeting, and quarterly meeting with my boss, all focused on feedback on my performance. And I'm sure you've been in a similar role too. As a teacher, they come in, they observe you. Mm-hmm. As a bartender, not ever have I had not someone standing in front of me critiquing how I make a drink.
Yeah.
And that's okay. You know what I mean?
Right.
But who does not have that is Congress. They avoid this criticism, this critique, this interaction with their electorate, their constituents. They'd rather continue to say, can't do anything, vote me in, and things will change. There's this idea that if Democrats come back into power, the ones who are corporate Democrats, I think we kind of know the type of Democrat. I'm not talking about an AOC or Greg Cesar or Ayanna Pressley. I'm talking about some other Democrats who are like, if we just get back in, we'll go back to that really beautiful day right before the election in 2024 where everything was fine. And things just weren't.
No.
I think we all know that. And to just have this idea of like, we just need to go back to what we were before is not going to do it. I think, especially being a fellow person at Indivisible, we're ready to create something new we are ready for an America 2.0 that really looks at these issues that have happened and like, okay, we're going to make sure that truly doesn't happen again. Founding fathers had way too much faith that Congress would never give up their power of the purse to someone like Donald Trump. Well, that would never happen, and look where we are. So that's why I harp so hard on the ethical and financial standards, because it's the only way. When you start saying morality standards, or it gets a little murky, but ethical, financial, it's clear, cut, and dry.
Yeah. Republicans tout that Democrats want to have our borders wide open, and that's going to create criminals coming in, and they will also say that that ICE is only removing the bad immigrants, the ones that have committed violent crimes or whatever. What do you say about protecting our borders if elected?
Yeah, look, laws are meant to be followed. I'm not saying, I don't think any Democrat is saying we should have open borders and laws are frivolous and not to be followed. By the way, 70% of the people who are in ICE custody are not criminal offenders.
Yeah, especially violent criminal offenders.
Criminal offenders on top of that.
Yeah.
So there's that.
What percentage?
70%.
70%.
7-0.
They're just regular old Joe Schmoes.
They're
that
just
overextended
they're just
their
trying
stay.
to make a better life for themselves, like my grandparents did.
Or for their kids. Get
or for their children.
Kids out of
Yes.
danger.
Absolutely.
My mother always said that this is the best country in the world because we are the great American melting pot.
Yep.
And it's funny that she would be very staunch Republican, but growing up, that's what she taught me, and those were my deep-rooted values.
Yeah, I mean, melting pot, I remember that being one of my terms in my history class when I was in junior high, so I would agree. I also think, with ICE and this situation, that I say return the immigration naturalization services that were in place before. This is supposed to be a service. This is supposed to be helping people assimilate or immigrate and become a part of society here in the United States. It's not supposed to be a criminal sort of pursuit.
Punitive,
right.
Okay.
And for those that violate the law, because we all have, we follow the rules. It is just, something that we teach kids at a very young age. You follow the rules. You own up to when you don't. For the people that are not following the rules or the laws, and I do think that we need an immigration overhaul that makes it so that it is not so difficult and that people are able to come here and, be able to contribute to society, pay their taxes, get Social Security and that stuff without it being a fear and then being ostracized. But for those that do, again, we are, quote unquote, for most people, the greatest country in the world. And so this idea that we're supposed to have this eye for an eye retributive type of justice system is very upsetting to me. It's not how I was raised, and I don't think it's how most people were raised in the United States, that if someone does something wrong to you, you do it back to them. There is that human nature to want to do that. But I think, as a evolved society, we try not to be. And so my idea is that this needs to be a reformative approach. If we are going to deport people, then it needs to be like it was before. We're not making propaganda videos out of it. We're not buying private jets to do it. We're using the military planes that we did before. We're not making a big spectacle out of this. We're returning these people to where they came from in as humane a way as possible. And I think that's got to be the focus. You know what I mean? This whole idea of they broke the law and we need to treat them badly is a reflection of people being left behind for so long in this country that they're just so angry. And that's why you see a lot of people like, I just want to own the libs, even to the detriment of themselves.
Yeah.
And so it's not a switch. It's not going to happen overnight. But we really need to start investing in the people in this country and letting them know that they're taken care of by their government in the same way that Amazon and Tesla and all these other corporations are. Because that's why people are angry and pointing at the other finger, because it's like a rat in a cage situation. And also, they're pumped with this information by the people who want them not looking up at them. They want us looking at each other.
Yeah.
And we are not the
blame.
problem. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, but for me, with justice systems, and it's a discussion I had in my last teaching job was reformative, retributive. What does that type of justice system look like? How do we get to the ideals and the morals and values that we put forth for this country in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution? We don't always live up to those things, but it's our goal to be as close to that as we possibly can.
Yeah, thank you for responding to that and sharing that. You're going to be running against Bill Keating.
Correct.
And he is the incumbent since 2013?
2010.
2010.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he's been around a long time, and he's a Democrat. What makes you different than your Democratic opponents?
Sure. So I'm not taking any PAC money immediately, just putting that out there. It is not something that, for me, that's the change that I want to see and I want to be part of. All the things that I have discussed about implementing term limits, overturning Citizens United, banning stock trading, these are things I fully believe. These are conversations I've had with people in this district, around this country, in general. These are conversations I've had with people who don't agree with me politically. I've been in food and beverage a long time. To assume that I have worked in all liberal spaces would be lies.
Yeah, so you get a lot of people chatting with you when you're serving them at the bar.
Oh, for sure. And I've had, I worked in Texas for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
I left New York and went to Texas for a little bit. It was Austin, so, sure, a liberal city, but State House was right around the corner from my job.
Yeah.
I served a lot of the Republican members of the House and Senate and the Texas House, Texas
wow.
Congress. So I've had conversations with people, and these are things that across the aisle, this is like an 80-20 thing. Term limits, banning Citizens United, banning stock trading by members of Congress, health care that's affordable and accessible for all, Medicare for all, whatever it may be. I don't believe in this two-system thing where we get to allow private insurance companies to still abuse Medicare and abuse patients and deny care. That system's got to go away.
Yeah, we've got the insurance companies practicing medicine
Right.
without a medical degree.
Right. So those are the types of things. Beyond that, this is a very interesting place I have found myself in this position running for Congress. You get a lot of people who are like, well, how are you going to be different? What's different from you than him? Or he's always voted the way that I want. Shouldn't that be the bare minimum of what you expect of your congressman, that they voted the way that you would want them to? You would expect them to vote for things that benefit you. Mm-hmm. It goes back a little bit to, I think, of the Mamdani being the man for the moment and not trying to change himself for the moment. These are things that I believe and I really want to fight for and will not compromise on them. Mm-hmm. Whereas, this is not something that is innately in Keating's beliefs. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, being part of Indivisible, I know for a fact that Keating has had petitions dropped off at his office, local offices, all three, January, February, March, at least, requesting quarterly town halls, requesting to just be accessible and meet with your voters. He had a town hall last year. It was his first one in 6 years.
Wow.
He had one more after that. It was online Zoom, and it was to Indivisible leaders only. And I have other critiques too. I don't think if you have a room full of people who've come out for your first town hall in 6 years, they should have to dip into a bucket for a raffle ticket to hope to ask you a question to engage with you.
Yeah.
Those are just the differences, just off the top of my head.
So how will you be more accessible?
So for me, doing those quarterly town halls at the very least. If you look at a congressional schedule, they have a lot of time off. If you do not see them that often, that's the problem. Mm-hmm. Look, I'm up and coming. I don't have the structures in place that Keating currently has. But my small little mighty team is already looking at how do we do something like that, like a town hall. We just hit so for those listening who don't know, in order for me to be an option for you to vote, which I hope you vote for me, but even to be an option for you to vote for, I need to collect 2,000 signatures from throughout the towns. So I collect the 2,000 signatures. They have to be by town. They have to go back to the town clerk. They have to be approved. I have to go collect them. I have to pull them all back together. I got to bring them to the Secretary of State. This is not an easy thing to, just wake up one day and say, I'm going to be on that ballot. Yeah. You got to put some work into it. Mm-hmm. So we're doing that work, and my team is, the people who have supported me so far have been wonderful, and we've passed that 2,000 signature threshold, and so nice. We have some more coming in. We're feeling good about that. So now we're looking at the next steps because you don't want to lie to people and be like, I'm going to be a candidate, and then you don't get the signatures. You're not there. People are disappointed. Now I feel very confident about that. So I'm looking at how do I do a town hall. I don't have $100,000 in PAC donations on top of some other money that I've been sitting on. I am new and fresh to this, but I've been looking at how do we do social media town halls with local influencers, people who care, that have influence in the district. How do I get an actual physical venue. And then on top of that, it's just being in the district. For me in the position I'm in, it's fighting a lot for name recognition. It's a little bit of a clawing and scraping to be like, hey, I'm here, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
I am legitimate. We've only raised about $20,000, but that's not stopping us.
Nothing.
You know what I mean? Well, you know what? It's all local people who, whether some people have donated a good amount of money. I won't say that I don't have a large donation, but these are all people you can look at their history that have never really invested in politics like this before. They're doing it because they want to see someone new. They want to see someone working in middle class. They want to see someone who's not bought out by corporations.
Mm-hmm.
And
again, I think the left and the right can buy into that.
Well, yes, that's why it's an 80-20 thing, and I think that's why so many people are suddenly mad about AIPAC. You know what I mean? Never really heard about AIPAC, but now suddenly they're like, who's taking these donations?
Mm-hmm.
How much money have you taken over the years? And what does that really reflect? People who take PAC donations from Eversource or people who take PAC donations from Lockheed Martin. We're all out of healthcare, out of a good education system, and spending money on a war nobody wants to be a part of.
Yeah.
And so when you look at the history of donations to these politicians, it is very, very challenging to say, well, of course you have my interests at heart. I donated $50 to you, as opposed to Lockheed Martin's $7,000 over the primary in general. Mm-hmm. And then they have the influence. It's not just PAC donations. It's the people so they get the PAC donations and the people behind the PACs who also donate. And then they're the ones with the money to be in the spaces at the events with these politicians.
Yeah.
And so it's offensive to have a town hall and then say, pick a raffle ticket and hope that you get to ask a question.
Yeah.
I'm very lucky I was the first question at that time.
Oh, what did you ask?
I asked him what his plan was. This was 60 days after the election. I said, we're 60 days in. Democrats are flailing. You're wayward souls. There's no comprehensive response to what's happening right now. Mm-hmm. That is disappointing. What are you going to do, Bill Keating, to pull people together?
Yeah.
Because at some point, someone's got to step up.
Yeah.
And I'd called his office. I left a letter saying, or a long voicemail saying, you should be doing town halls in all the parts of your district that might be a little purple or a little red or may not line with you ideologically. Because when this administration's policies have an impact on these people, even though you'll go to this town hall, they'll yell at you. Look, I understand that these town halls are not fun, probably, for someone who hasn't done it in 6 years. People are angry. Mm-hmm. They're scared. They're there to yell. They're there to vent. That's the role you signed up for. I mean, even me, 2 months in, I've had people email me, message me, call me. Suddenly, everyone in my life is a political consultant telling me the things that I should be talking about. Mm-hmm. And I take that and try to improve myself every day because these are people who care. These are people who are scared, and they want to hear from you.
Yeah.
I could go on a little bit longer about how I plan to distinguish myself from him, but
yeah, well, go ahead.
I'm
writing down my thoughts.
All right, great. Yeah, I mean, I'm not look. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay.
All right, I'll wrap it up with this really quickly. My husband and I are certainly not super wealthy, but we have been smart with money in the last few years or so to start saving and maybe buying, putting money in the stock market, things like that. We have a financial advisor I have made it very clear what my policy is, what my stance is, and that I don't ever want to see individual stocks traded while I'm in office. I don't care. There's no reason why that should ever happen. Mm-hmm. And there's no reason why if that does happen, it's not reported in time.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying other people in power have maybe not reported their stocks in time, but I'll let your viewers sort of look into that. Those are the types of things that send a message, and that basically you are not responsible to the American people. You're responsible to yourself and your wallet.
And that's not right.
And it's not right. We need, again, public servants, not career politicians.
Yeah. People say that they're afraid of socialism, but there are people who are afraid of socialism who also get SNAP benefits and are on Medicaid for their health insurance and things like that. And those are socialism. Those are socialistic initiatives, and we all benefit from them. We all benefit from poor people being healthy. And you said a little while ago about prevention being far less expensive than treatment. And by having health insurance so expensive that our young, healthy folks are opting not to buy health insurance because it's too they can't afford it.
That it strains the system.
It strains the system because then the only ones who are on health insurance are the ones that need all the very, very expensive treatment and care.
Well, it's interesting you say that as well because look, I think we're all ready for a government that actually works for us. Performance votes are stupid on both sides apart. Those performance votes that don't really actually pass legislation, they're like, we're just going to say things are bad. Like the vote saying socialism was bad. Mm-hmm. Or the horrors of socialism. What about the horrors of capitalism? 50% of our country goes into bankruptcy over one medical emergency. That's insane. Why are we?
And that is capitalism.
It also, socialism just means less poor people. It doesn't mean no capitalism.
Yeah.
And also, like with the performance votes, why are we thanking ICE for their service to our country? Why are we doing a vote like that before we're doing that for our service members, our veterans? Mm-hmm. I know we have like 2 minutes left, but I will say universal basic income. I know that gets people scary because we're talking about socialism. I say, let's take universal basic income and give it to all of our veterans and watch how their lives improve. And then you tell me universal basic income doesn't work.
Yeah.
Do that and tell me it doesn't work. And then maybe I'll believe you. But I promise you, we have people who have sacrificed their lives for us to come back here. They're guaranteed a home, health care. Their life is stable for them and their families. Watch how their lives improve and watch how they take that money and go beyond that. Those are the types of things we really need to start doing.
Sounds awesome. If our listeners would like to find out more about you, Craig,
yes.
I understand they can go to your website, craigswallowforcongress.com.
Absolutely.
And they can see pictures of you and your husband and your little family of 2 rescue dogs.
Yes.
Omaha and Ruth.
Yes.
Right?
Omaha and Ruth are our little babies. They're the best. craigswallowforcongress.com. You'll find everything you need to know there for the most part. You'll be able to email us. We get the responses. We get the feedback. We're happy to. It'll also have my donation page looking for small dollar donations. If you're hearing this and you're supportive of me and want to see me continue this on, donate $5. It'll mean the world to me. And then my husband handwrites you a thank you card. So everyone gets a handwritten thank you card from us. Yeah, they're going out.
Great.
They've already started going out this week. So yeah, we got a lot more coming out. But yeah, trying to bring that personal touch to this because politics is people, and this is a human thing, and we want to make sure that people know who we are and what we value and what we're trying to accomplish for them.
Yeah, bringing it down to the foundational level of
the neighborly thing that you do. Your neighbor does something for you, you write a thank you card.
Connection. Yeah, I like it. If you would like to learn more about Indivisible Plymouth, you can go to our website, which is indivisibleplymouth.org. You can find us on Facebook as well. And I did forget to ask you, and you brought it up a couple times, which Indivisible chapter were you part of?
I joined.
It was when you were in New York City, right?
No, it was here.
Okay.
So I was part of Indivisible South Coast New England. I joined with them in January of 25. It was, 10 wonderful women from Rhode Island and southeastern Mass. And, I joined and, I was just excited to put my operational, kind of hat on and help figure out how to make things, streamlined and better, and how do we connect with other groups. And so, yeah, the people I worked with there, shout out to Susan and VA and Pat and just, the whole crew, like Christine, Adam, they do such incredible work there. They see what Indivisible can do, which is connecting people to other groups that are already active in the community and helping build them up. That was our view as our Indivisible group, and not to recreate the wheel and not to be like, hey, we're going to come in and start fixing everything, but recognizing that there are really wonderful groups in our area already doing stuff. How do we support them? And then how do we fill in any gaps there? And so any Indivisible group in the area, in your area, if you're listening, join it.
Yeah, it really makes you feel like it's less discouraging because you feel like you're actively taking a role in making something better.
You feel impactful every day,
yeah,
in little ways, and it's so important.
And it's our nonviolent mission to support democracy and human rights is what it's
absolutely
really on a large scale is what it's all about.
And everyone's welcome, and that's what I loved about it too. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter if you voted for Trump 3 times or if you voted for a Democrat your entire life. If you are seeing what's happening in the system and feeling like it needs change, there's a place for you at Indivisible.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's actually one good thing that's come out. It's kind of nice to see people motivated to join together and try to make things better.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. And I'd like to also give a shout out to the local scene here in the industrial park in Plymouth. They've been helping us produce this podcast, the Participation Project. And you can also find out more about them and their commitment to the community on their website, thelocalscene.media. And Craig Swallow, it's been such a pleasure to talk with you. I'm so excited that we got to spend this time together and hopefully let folks learn a little more about you. And I wish you so much luck with
Thank you so
the
much.
elections.
It was been wonderful to be here. Nice to see you again. And for anyone in Plymouth, I'll be back in the area for Memorial Day weekend. But
fun.
Can check out the website next week for the full month of May's activities that are coming up.
Where are you going to be that weekend?
Oh God, I'm gonna hit up New Bedford. I'm gonna hit up Plymouth. Marion has a little parade. So yeah, we're just trying to see what's happening in little towns and being there at those types of events, because it's not about being at the award ceremonies or the things like that. It's about being with the people who are active in their community, whether it's a yard sale, a farmer's market, whatever it may be. I am excited just to meet people, shake hands, and just be involved in the community. This is fun for me. I am excited to meet people. I'm excited to chat with them, and I'm excited to be an advocate. So thank you so much for having me.